Friends, if you are excited to watch the upcoming super fun and adventurous movie Smurfs 2025 in English, then you are in for a real treat. If you are visiting our channel for the very first time, make sure to stay connected because today's video is going to take you deep into the magical world of the Smurfs like never before. In this video, we are going to talk about Smurfs 2025 in detail, from what this movie is all about to where you can watch it. Whether you are curious about the storyline, the characters, the behind-the-scenes magic, or where and how you can enjoy this film, I have got you completely covered. I will tell you all the important details about where you can catch this film, whether it's coming to your nearest cinema, landing directly on your favorite OTT platform, or appearing on a satellite channel for you to enjoy at home. I will guide you step by step through all the available options so you can experience this colorful, exciting journey in the best way possible. But that's not all. We will also explore the entire journey of the movie's creation, from its earliest pre-production days, the creative process, the design of the magical Smurf village, to the actual filming and how the team brought the Smurfs to life once again on the big screen. We will discuss the hard work that went into post-production, the special effects, and how the movie has been crafted to deliver a fresh, thrilling experience while staying true to the heart of the Smurfs we all know and love. I will also break down the budget of the movie, how much was spent to bring this grand Smurfs adventure to life, and how it is expected to perform at the box office. Will it be another big hit? We will discuss that too. I will also walk you through the story of the movie, what new adventures the Smurfs will embark on, and what challenges they will face this time. You will get a quick but exciting review of the storyline to keep you hooked. And of course, we will explore the full star cast, the actors lending their voices to these beloved characters, and which actor is playing which Smurf in this brand new adventure. We will take a detailed look at their performances, and how each character shines in their unique way. On top of all that, we will talk about some truly fascinating facts and lesser-known details about Smurfs 2025 that fans would not want to miss. From special character designs, surprises in the plot, to unexpected twists, there is a lot waiting to be discovered. That's why I invite you, friends, to stay with me till the very end of the video because this Smurfs journey is packed with excitement from start to finish. So let's dive right in and start exploring this magical blue world together. In Smurfs 2025, the story unfolds in a wonderfully layered, adventurous, and emotionally rich journey that takes the familiar charm of the Smurfs and lifts it to a much grander scale. The movie opens in the heart of the ever-cheerful Smurf village, where life flows as it always has. The Smurfs are each busy with their own delightful routines. Brainy is busy overthinking and organizing everything. Hefty is proudly showing off his strength. Clumsy is, as always, tumbling into unexpected situations. And Smurfette is trying to balance being a friend, a leader, and a brave adventurer. Everything seems perfectly in place, until an unusual disturbance ripples through the magical forest surrounding their village. It starts small, a strange breeze, a shifting glow in the sky, a tree that suddenly blooms out of season, but it quickly becomes clear that something ancient has been awakened. Right from the beginning, the movie signals that this isn't just another small Smurf adventure. The narrative doesn't stick to the classic One Direction storyline. It surprises the audience by weaving together present-day events with fascinating flashbacks to a time long before the Smurfs we know. These flashbacks are not quick memory glances, but fully developed scenes that transport the audience to the age of the Smurf ancestors. We see that centuries ago, the Smurfs' magical world faced a terrifying power, an untamed force so dangerous that it had to be sealed away and forgotten. These ancient Smurfs made great sacrifices to protect the future, and the movie keeps returning to this distant past throughout the story, gradually connecting it to the present-day journey of our beloved blue friends. The discovery of an ancient map in one of Papa Smurf's oldest books becomes the moment that sets everything in motion. This map isn't just a guide. It's a key that reveals the path to a legendary lost land filled with pure, raw magic that could change their world forever. The Smurfs are curious and excited, but Papa Smurf knows this adventure won't be easy. At the same time, in a perfectly timed twist, Gargamel, still as determined, greedy, and hilariously clumsy as ever, learns about the map and the ancient power hidden deep within the Forgotten Lands. His plan is simple: find it first and use it to finally control the Smurfs and all magic. But as the story unfolds, things do not go the way he expects. The Smurfs set out on their most dangerous and breathtaking journey yet, leaving the safety of their village and traveling through enchanted lands that none of them have ever seen. This is where the movie begins to break away from traditional storytelling. Time doesn't work the same way in these magical places. In some lands, moments stretch endlessly, while in others, entire days pass in the blink of an eye. The Smurfs lose their sense of direction, their plans fall apart, and they are forced to rely on their instincts, their friendships, and their ability to adapt. The narrative plays with this beautifully, jumping between past, present, and hints of the future, creating a magical, dreamlike flow that keeps the audience guessing what's real, what's remembered, and what's still to come. The key turning points in the story come with clever, surprising twists. One of the most emotional discoveries happens when Smurfette learns that her own origins are deeply connected to the ancient magic they are now seeking. Through magical visions, guided by ancient forest spirits, Smurfette realizes that the same magic that created her may also hold the power to reshape the world. This shakes her deeply. Smurfette has always been the Smurf who questions where she fits in. But now she finds herself questioning whether her very existence was part of something much bigger. Something planned long before she was ever brought to life. Her personal journey of identity, self-worth, and courage becomes the heart of the film, giving her a powerful emotional arc that drives the story forward. At the same time, the movie gives space for every Smurf in the group to face their own individual challenges. Brainy, who has always believed that planning and logic can solve everything, is forced to make decisions when all his carefully drawn maps and plans fail him. He learns that sometimes heart matters more than facts. Hefty, who has always relied on strength, is pushed into situations where power is useless and trust is everything. Clumsy, the source of endless accidents, discovers that his unplanned, stumbling ways are exactly what the team needs when the path ahead is uncertain. Each character grows in a way that feels earned, and each test they face makes their journey richer. When they finally reach the legendary Lost Land, the story flips expectations once again. Gargamel has arrived first, but instead of claiming a simple victory, he unknowingly unleashes a magical force that neither he nor the Smurfs can control. The ancient magic doesn't obey anyone. It follows its own wild patterns, and it begins to tear apart the fabric of the magical world. In a clever twist, Gargamel and the Smurfs are forced into a reluctant partnership. Their long-standing rivalry pauses as they realize that if they don't work together, they will all lose everything they care about. The story does something unexpected by letting the audience see things from Gargamel's perspective. For the first time, we get a glimpse of his motivations, his frustrations, and his small moments of honesty that make him more than just a comic villain. His character is still wonderfully foolish, but we also see his rare flashes of vulnerability and desperation. The film plays with time and perspective until the very end. Flashbacks from the ancient Smurfs continue to reveal surprising secrets that directly connect to the choices the modern Smurfs must now make. The magic that once saved their world now threatens to destroy it. And the story builds to a breathtaking, emotional finale where every decision counts. The final act is packed with energy, wonder, and emotional weight as the Smurfs must trust each other, forgive old mistakes, and believe in themselves more than ever. Smurfette's story comes full circle as she steps into a leadership role with confidence, realizing that her unique connection to the magic is not a curse but a gift. Throughout the film, the narrative moves like a flowing river, sometimes quick and playful, sometimes slow and thoughtful, sometimes winding in unexpected directions. It never fully settles into a predictable path, and that's what makes it feel alive and exciting. The story constantly invites the audience to think, to feel, to laugh, and to be surprised. It explores the idea that the past is never really gone, that friendships grow stronger when tested, and that magic is not just about power, it's about trust, love, and the courage to choose what's right, even when the path is uncertain. Smurfs 2025 takes everything audiences love about the Smurfs, the humor, the adventure, the colorful world, and expands it with a bold, layered, and emotionally rich narrative that feels fresh, magical, and unforgettable. When it comes to character development, this movie doesn't just give us cardboard cutouts walking through a story. It breathes life into its characters, gives them edges, layers, contradictions, and the kind of depth that makes them stick in your mind long after the credits roll. Every character feels like someone you could bump into on the street or sit next to on a long bus ride. They're messy, flawed, hopeful, scared, determined, broken, and sometimes a little ridiculous, but that's exactly what makes them so magnetic. They don't exist just to tick off plot points. They exist because they have their own goals, dreams, regrets, and secrets that ripple through the story in the most fascinating ways. You don't just watch them move from scene to scene. You watch them wrestle with themselves. Some start off cocky, thinking they have life all figured out, only to stumble headfirst into situations that strip away their confidence and force them to rebuild from scratch. Others begin as timid, unsure, maybe even invisible to the world around them, and slowly find their voice, their courage, their place. There are those who change dramatically, shedding their old selves like a snake's skin, but there are also those who refuse to grow, who dig in their heels and cling to their flaws even when it drags them down. That's what makes it so human. It's not always a neat, upward climb. Sometimes it's messy, sometimes people backslide, and sometimes their biggest moment of growth is simply learning to accept who they already are. What's truly captivating is how these transformations aren't just personal. They're triggered by the relationships that pulse at the heart of the story. Friendships don't just offer support. They challenge, frustrate, and force characters to see themselves through someone else's eyes. Rivalries bring out hidden insecurities and push characters to confront parts of themselves they'd rather ignore. Romantic connections unfold with awkwardness, tenderness, jealousy, and sometimes heartbreak, but always with a sense of authenticity. Even brief encounters with side characters can send a ripple through a protagonist's life, shifting their direction in ways they never expected. Every relationship feels earned. There's tension, there's warmth, there's misunderstanding, and sometimes there's the bittersweet ache of people growing apart even when they desperately want to stay connected. Motivations here are not broadcast with flashing signs. Sometimes a character's true drive simmers beneath the surface, only revealing itself when they're pushed to the brink. You get to witness those small moments that hint at what's really going on inside. The silent stare, the quick lie, the hesitation before making a choice, and when it all clicks, it's like watching a puzzle piece snap into place. Some chase success to fill a void. Some seek revenge to cover old wounds. Some fight for love. Some run from it. Some simply want to be seen. And sometimes, the motivations they thought were driving them turn out to be a mask for something deeper. The arcs are beautifully intertwined. A decision made by one character often sets off a chain reaction that forces others to adapt, retaliate, forgive, or even spiral. Their journeys aren't isolated. They clash, merge, and twist around each other in ways that keep you hooked. Just when you think you know where someone's headed, a moment of honesty or betrayal snaps the path in a new direction. Some characters find peace, some are consumed by guilt, some are shattered and have to rebuild, while others quietly realize they've been their own worst enemy all along. And the best part is, the story allows them room to stumble. There's no rush to perfect them, no need to force them into cookie-cutter endings. Their growth feels like real life, messy, unpredictable, frustrating, but also incredibly satisfying. It's not just what they achieve by the end, it's what they've learned about themselves, about each other, about what matters. They carry their scars, their victories, their regrets, and somehow, they keep moving forward. These characters don't fade when the story ends. They linger fully formed, as if they're out there somewhere, still living their lives. That's what makes their development so rich, so textured, and so unforgettable. The performances in this film don't just hit the right notes. They sing, they soar, they punch you in the gut when you least expect it. The actors don't merely play their roles. They dissolve into them, slipping on their characters like a second skin until you stop seeing the actor and start believing you're watching someone real. Someone with a life that stretches far beyond what you see on screen. There's an energy in the performances that makes every glance, every pause, every trembling hand feel loaded with meaning. The leads absolutely dominate their screen time, pulling the audience in with the weight of their presence. They don't need grand speeches to command attention. Sometimes it's the quiet, controlled moments where the real magic happens. The flicker of doubt in their eyes, the slight quiver in their voice, the tension in their jaw as they fight to hold it together. You can feel their inner battles, the history their character drags behind them, the layers they're trying to keep hidden just under the surface. But it's not just about the leads. The supporting cast refuses to be left in the shadows. They are the ones who bring texture and color to the story. The ones who make the world feel lived in and messy and unpredictable. Every supporting actor seems to understand their place in the emotional puzzle, and they slip effortlessly into their roles, adding nuance, adding tension, adding heart. Some pop in for a single scene and still manage to leave a lasting impression, delivering moments that feel like they could have been throwaway lines, but instead carry surprising weight because of how authentically they're performed. There are certain standout performances that light the film on fire. Some actors just have that spark, the ability to make even the simplest scene burst with electricity, whether it's through razor-sharp delivery, a heart-wrenching breakdown, or the perfect comedic timing that sneaks up and catches you off guard. These performances carve out space in your memory. They bring depth to moments that could have easily slipped by unnoticed. It's not about chasing big, showy moments either. It's about making you believe. These actors carry their characters' pain, joy, stubbornness, and vulnerability with a kind of honesty that hooks you in completely. The chemistry between the cast members is another electric current running through the film. You can feel it in the way they challenge each other, comfort each other, clash with each other. It's in the unscripted glances, the moments when dialogue seems to melt away, and what's left is pure, unspoken connection. When characters laugh together, it feels real. When they fight, it feels raw. When they break, it feels like something you're not supposed to be watching, like you've accidentally stepped into someone's private moment. Every actor seems to understand the emotional weight their character carries, and they step up to deliver it with precision and heart. Even in the smallest gestures, the performances feel tuned to the perfect frequency. A casual line is given just the right hesitation to hint at something deeper. A background character delivers a reaction that completely shifts how you understand the scene. Every role, no matter how big or small, is treated with care, and it shows. The film doesn't lean on any one actor to carry it all. It thrives because everyone shows up. Everyone is locked in. Everyone brings their own spark, their own rhythm, and together, they create a performance tapestry that feels alive, electric, and utterly believable. The performances aren't just good. They're the beating heart of the entire story. They make the world breathe, the stakes matter, and the emotions hit exactly where they should. The director's fingerprints are all over this film, steering every beat, every glance, every breath, like a conductor guiding a sprawling symphony. The tone is not just set, it's sculpted with care, with precision, and with a little bit of daring. The director knows exactly when to lean into the tension, when to let the quiet linger, when to explode with energy, and when to pull back and let a moment sit in silence. There's a rhythm here that pulls you in, a flow that feels almost invisible, until you realize just how tightly every scene is controlled to hit exactly where it should. The mood doesn't come from flashy tricks. It seeps into the story through carefully chosen colors, the weight of pauses, the texture of sounds, the way the camera drifts or locks in with sharp intensity. Every decision seems to speak the same language, all in service of the world being built. The director shapes the emotional current, sometimes smoothing the waters and other times sending waves crashing over the audience, all without ever losing control. There's a clear vision guiding this story, a sense that the director knows not only what to show but how to show it in a way that feels fresh and meaningful. The shot composition is carefully curated, sometimes framing characters in tight, suffocating spaces to reflect their inner turmoil, other times pulling back to let the environment dwarf them, making them feel small, isolated, or free depending on where the story needs to go. Every angle, every tracking shot, every carefully timed cut feels like it's placed with purpose, not just to look pretty, but to tell you something about the characters, the stakes, and the shifting emotional ground beneath their feet. Stylistic choices pop up throughout the film, and they don't feel like gimmicks. They feel like part of the story's DNA. Maybe it's the way flashbacks bleed into the present without a harsh break. Maybe it's the way sound drops out in key moments to make silence roar louder than words. Maybe it's the way certain colors dominate scenes to underline mood swings or character shifts. Whatever these flourishes are, they're not distractions. They pull you deeper, they amplify the emotional weight. They make you feel not just like you're watching a story unfold, but like you're inside it, living it, breathing it. The pacing dances between tight, breathless sequences and slow, deliberate stretches where the story isn't in a rush to move forward. It's more interested in letting you sit with the characters, soak in the atmosphere, and let the tension build naturally. The director understands when to push the gas pedal and when to let things simmer. Moments are allowed to hang in the air, sometimes with agonizing slowness, sometimes with breakneck urgency, but always with a pulse that keeps you engaged. Nothing feels like filler. Even the quietest scenes hum with intention, always nudging the story, always deepening the mood. It's the director's hand that stitches all these pieces together, performance, sound, pacing, visuals, into something that feels alive and purposeful. There's a boldness to some of the choices that might catch you off guard, but that's where the film finds its spark. It doesn't play it safe. It's not afraid to slow down when others would speed up, to hold a shot longer than expected, to let a scene breathe just long enough to crack your heart open. The director isn't just telling a story, they're guiding an experience, shaping it moment by moment, making sure that by the time you reach the end, you've not just watched something, you've felt it in your bones. The cinematography in this film doesn't just capture what's happening. It shapes how it feels, how it lingers, how it hits you right in the chest. Every frame seems to have been built with intention, like a painting in motion, where even the smallest details are soaked in meaning. Camera angles don't just offer perspective. They become emotional tools, slipping us inside the heads and hearts of the characters, or pulling us far enough away to make us feel like quiet observers of something fragile and personal. Sometimes the camera floats, weightless, following a character with a soft, almost dreamlike glide, and other times it's rigid and sharp, locking us into tight spaces where you can almost feel the claustrophobia pressing in. The lighting choices carry the mood on their shoulders. There are moments where soft, golden light floods a scene, wrapping it in warmth, making the air feel heavy with nostalgia or quiet hope. Then there are the stark contrasts, where harsh shadows carve faces in half, splitting light and dark right down the middle, and you can almost sense the internal conflict flickering beneath the surface. Low light settings don't just hide things, they reveal things in a more honest way. What's left in shadow sometimes speaks louder than what's standing in the spotlight. The use of natural light often gives the story a raw, unpolished edge, while dramatic lighting ramps up the intensity when the stakes are on the line. Framing is a whole language of its own here. Sometimes characters are pushed to the edges of the frame, swallowed by their surroundings, as if the world is too big for them, or they're slipping out of their own story. Other times, the camera moves in close, so close you can count every breath, every bead of sweat, every nervous twitch. These intimate shots don't just show faces, they show souls. Wide shots stretch across sweeping landscapes or crowded streets, not just to dazzle but to underline where the characters sit in the grand, indifferent scale of the world. And then there are those beautifully deliberate symmetrical shots where everything seems meticulously balanced, which can either soothe the eye or subtly unnerve you depending on what's happening within that careful structure. Some moments burn themselves into your memory because of how visually striking they are. Maybe it's a single, continuous tracking shot that pulls you breathlessly through a chaotic scene, refusing to let you look away. Maybe it's a slow-motion sequence where time seems to bend, letting you absorb every aching detail. Maybe it's the sudden, disorienting snap to a handheld camera that makes your pulse race as if you're right there in the thick of it. These standout moments aren't just visual tricks. They're loaded with emotion, with story, with tension that grips you tighter the longer you watch. The cinematography knows how to hold you in the uncomfortable spaces, when the air feels too still or the silence too loud. It creates tension not by showing everything but by suggesting, by hinting at what's just outside the frame, by making your imagination do some of the heavy lifting. It creates beauty, not by drenching every scene in perfect lighting, but by capturing the imperfect, the messy, the fleeting, the raw, and making it shimmer with significance. The camera becomes a character in itself, sometimes hiding, sometimes revealing, sometimes racing to catch up. It's not just documenting what's happening, it's shaping how you feel about what's happening. The way it moves, the way it lingers, the way it frames a moment just before it breaks. It's all part of the pulse of the story. The cinematography breathes life into the film, turning ordinary moments into unforgettable ones, and making sure that every visual choice lands with purpose and weight. The editing in this film is like the heartbeat that keeps the story alive and kicking, setting the rhythm for every moment, every breath, every pulse of the narrative. It's the invisible hand that guides you through the highs and the lows, sometimes sweeping you along in a rush, sometimes pressing pause just long enough to make you sit with the weight of a scene. The flow feels natural, like it knows exactly when to speed up and when to slow down, when to cut away and when to linger just a second longer to let the emotion settle deep in your bones. The transitions between scenes glide so smoothly you almost don't notice them, but when you do, you realize just how carefully they've been crafted. Sometimes it's a clever visual match that makes two completely different scenes snap together like puzzle pieces. Sometimes it's the rhythm of sound that carries you forward, and sometimes it's the sheer emotional momentum that pulls you from one beat to the next without missing a step. The pacing knows how to play the long game. It doesn't sprint from start to finish. It knows when to hold back, when to tease, when to build anticipation, and when to let the tension crack like lightning. There are stretches where the film breathes, letting the characters sit in their quiet spaces, giving you time to absorb the gravity of what's unfolding. And then there are bursts where the editing cuts sharper, quicker, throwing you headfirst into moments of chaos or urgency. It's a dance, a balancing act, and the film manages to keep that rhythm alive without slipping into monotony or confusion. What makes the pacing so effective is that it's in sync with the emotional arc of the story. The editing speeds up when hearts race, when danger closes in, when stakes skyrocket, making your pulse climb alongside the characters. Then just when things seem like they might spiral out of control, the film pulls back, stretches time, holds on a glance, a sigh, a silent decision, forcing you to live in the weight of the moment. The emotional beats land harder because the editing gives them space to breathe. Nothing feels rushed when it's not supposed to be, and nothing drags without purpose. Even the quieter sequences, the ones that could easily stall the story, feel necessary because they carry the subtle shifts in character dynamics, the silent growth, the foreshadowing that keeps your curiosity on edge. The editing also plays with tempo in ways that surprise you. There are sudden, unexpected cuts that jolt you, snapping you into a new scene with the force of a hard stop. And there are dissolves that feel like memory washing into the present, blurring the line between past and now. The rhythm changes just enough to keep you leaning forward, never quite settling into predictability. It's like the film knows when your attention might start to drift and throws in a beat, a shift, a punch of energy to pull you right back in. What's especially striking is how the editing shapes tension. It can hold on a single shot until it's almost uncomfortable, stretching your patience, making you anticipate something that might not even come. It can chop moments into rapid cuts that overwhelm the senses, forcing you to experience the panic, the adrenaline, the chaos right alongside the characters. It knows when to hit hard and when to step back, when to close the door and when to throw it wide open. There's a musicality to the pacing, a rhythm that carries you from scene to scene, moment to moment, without ever losing its grip. Even when the film takes its time, it feels deliberate, like a deep breath before the plunge. The editing is the unsung hero that stitches all the pieces together, shaping not just how the story unfolds but how it feels, how it pulses, how it sticks with you. It doesn't just move the plot forward. It drives the emotion, sharpens the tension, softens the quiet, and makes sure that every beat, whether thunderous or whisper soft, lands exactly where it should. The soundtrack and score in this film don't just sit in the background. They weave themselves right into the DNA of the story, breathing life into every scene, guiding your emotions like an invisible hand. The music knows exactly when to step forward and when to pull back, when to crash in like a tidal wave, and when to disappear completely, letting silence roar in its place. It's not just sound, it's storytelling, a pulse that matches the film's every heartbeat, sometimes leading, sometimes following, but always connected. The soundtrack slips in at just the right moments, sometimes with swelling, cinematic grandeur that makes your chest tighten, sometimes with soft, delicate notes that feel like a whispered secret. There are recurring musical motifs that creep in quietly, almost like old memories sneaking back when you least expect them, tying different parts of the story together with subtle threads. These motifs don't just mark time. They remind you of the emotional weight certain moments carry. They echo in the background like the lingering shadow of a choice, a person, a place. There are moments where the score absolutely takes center stage, not in a way that overwhelms, but in a way that lifts the entire scene, as if the music and the visuals are dancing in perfect step. The composer seems to know exactly when to unleash those soaring strings, those pounding drums, those aching piano keys, and when to let the quiet hum of a single note hang in the air. There's a kind of emotional precision in the way the score rises and falls, catching the rhythm of the characters' hearts and amplifying it until you can feel it thudding in your own chest. Sometimes the music is bold, vibrant, grabbing your attention with its sheer presence, and other times it's a ghost, barely there, more of a feeling than a sound, gently tugging at your subconscious. The soundtrack doesn't just follow the obvious emotional cues. It knows how to play against the scene, sometimes layering upbeat music over heavy moments to create that unsettling emotional dissonance, sometimes stripping the sound away completely to let raw silence slam into you like a wall. Silence in this film is used like a weapon. There are scenes where the absence of music makes everything sharper, the tick of a clock louder, the breath of a character heavier, the crack of a footstep thunderous. That silence isn't empty, it's charged, making you lean in, making you feel the tension build until the music finally creeps back in and breaks the spell. There's a careful balance at play. The music doesn't bully the story, doesn't drown it out, doesn't tell you what to feel. It nudges, it guides, it enhances. It sits under conversations like a soft current, sometimes fading away so completely that when it returns, it hits with a force you didn't see coming. Some tracks carry such distinct emotional colors that they instantly pull you back into the world of the film even after the scene has moved on. Whether it's a recurring melody that follows a particular character, a theme that swells in moments of triumph, or a harsh rhythmic pulse that digs into scenes of conflict, each piece feels tailored to the story's emotional journey. The score isn't afraid to be bold when the film calls for it, layering instruments, building volume, stacking intensity until the sound practically shakes the ground beneath you. But just as quickly, it can strip everything away, leaving just a single instrument, a single note, lingering like the echo of something lost. It's that ability to stretch from the grand to the intimate, from the overwhelming to the achingly quiet, that makes the soundtrack and score feel so alive, so connected, so necessary. The music in this film doesn't just accompany the story. It becomes part of the story's breath, part of its skin, part of its heartbeat. It lifts scenes higher, digs emotions deeper, and holds the story together like a golden thread weaving through every frame. Whether you catch yourself humming a motif long after the film ends, or suddenly remembering how the silence in one scene wrapped around you like a vice, the soundtrack leaves its mark, stitching itself into the experience in a way you don't soon forget. The film dives headfirst into a sea of deeper themes and complex messages, not just sprinkling them on top like decoration, but weaving them tightly into the very fabric of the story. These themes don't arrive with loud announcements or heavy-handed speeches. They slowly unfold, slip into the quiet moments, creep into the conflicts, and bloom in the spaces between the characters' words. It's not about flashing neon signs that tell you what to think. It's about planting ideas that grow in your mind as the story moves forward, sometimes challenging you, sometimes comforting you, and sometimes leaving you with questions you can't easily shake off. One of the strongest threads running through the film is the exploration of identity and self-discovery. Characters are constantly peeling back their own layers, trying to figure out who they really are beneath all the expectations, failures, labels, and masks they've been wearing. It's the kind of journey that doesn't always offer neat answers. The film wrestles with the idea that finding yourself is messy, complicated, and sometimes painful. It shows that identity isn't a single, shining revelation. It's a patchwork of moments, decisions, mistakes, and tiny victories that shape who you become. The story plays with this theme in different corners, whether it's someone trying to escape their past, someone fighting to prove they belong, or someone realizing they've been chasing the wrong version of themselves all along. There's also a rich vein of the theme of connection. How people collide, influence, and change each other's lives in ways that can be both beautiful and destructive. The film leans into the tangled web of relationships, showing how trust can be built and broken, how love can heal but also scar, how sometimes the people we think we understand the most can surprise us in the best or worst ways. The message here isn't wrapped in cliches. It digs into the reality that connection takes work, That sometimes people miss each other even when they're standing inches apart. And that sometimes the hardest battles are the ones we fight to stay close to those we care about. The film also teases out ideas about freedom and control. It asks big, uncomfortable questions about whether we really make our own choices, or whether we're shaped by forces we can't see, whether that's society, family, history, or our own buried fears. It plays with the tension between breaking free and the safety of what's familiar, often forcing characters into situations where they have to confront what freedom actually costs. There are moments where the characters grapple with what it means to take control of their lives, to push back against expectations, to let go of the reins, and the film never simplifies those decisions. Another striking theme is the passage of time and the weight of memory. The story often circles back to the past, not as a comfortable place to visit, but as a shadow that shapes the present. Memories aren't treated like static flashbacks. They pulse with life, sometimes distorting, sometimes haunting, sometimes pushing characters toward growth. The film explores how memory can become a trap or a refuge, how the stories we tell ourselves about the past can shape who we allow ourselves to be in the future. There's also this quietly persistent undercurrent of resilience. The film doesn't frame resilience as grand gestures or superhero strength. It's in the small things. It's in getting up again after a quiet failure. It's in forgiving when it's hard. It's in facing the mirror when you've been avoiding it for years. The story doesn't present strength as something loud. It finds it in the soft, steady grind of simply continuing. What makes the themes hit so hard is that they feel earned. Nothing feels like it's there to check a box or deliver a forced message. The ideas grow out of the characters' struggles, out of their desires, their mistakes, their fears. The film doesn't spoon-feed you. It trusts you to sit with the mess, to draw your own conclusions, to feel the weight of the story without having to be told exactly what it all means. And that's what makes it linger. These themes don't just float away when the story ends. They follow you, tugging at your thoughts, nudging you to consider how they echo in your own life. The film leaves a space for you to bring yourself into it, to wrestle with its questions, to carry its ideas long after the screen fades to black. The visual effects in this film don't just show up to dazzle. They melt right into the fabric of the world, becoming an essential part of how the story breathes and moves. There's no sense of the effects sitting awkwardly on top of the scenes or pulling you out of the experience. They flow with the story, blending so seamlessly that sometimes you don't even realize you're watching something crafted by a digital hand. When the CGI steps forward, it does so with purpose, not just to flex technical muscle, but to pull you deeper into the world, to make the impossible feel tangible, to make the extraordinary feel like it belongs right there next to the ordinary. The beauty is in the balance. The film knows when to lean into spectacle, and when to let the effects quietly support the emotional core without shouting for attention. The big, sweeping visual moments hit hard because they're grounded in believable textures, weight, and movement. Whether it's towering structures, fantastical creatures, or intricate landscapes, the CGI carries the right amount of detail and physicality, making everything feel like it has mass and consequence. There's no floaty, disconnected gloss here. When something smashes, you feel the rumble. When something soars, it slices through the air like it belongs there. The digital effects are treated as natural extensions of the world, carefully integrated with the lighting, the shadows, the weather, and the environment, so nothing feels pasted in or slapped on. What really makes the visual effects shine is the way they interact with practical elements. The film doesn't rely on CGI as a crutch. It uses practical effects wherever possible, and the two styles work together like old friends. You can feel the grit of real surfaces, the spray of real water, the crunch of real debris. When characters touch or fight or run through the world, the practical effects anchor the action, giving it texture and realism. Then the CGI steps in to build on top of that foundation, expanding the world, adding layers that practical effects simply can't reach, but doing it in a way that complements rather than competes. There are moments where the visual effects become almost invisible, and that's where their strength really shows. You're not meant to gawk at them, you're meant to believe in them, to live inside them. When the world shifts, when environments crumble, when reality seems to bend, it happens with a fluidity that feels completely natural. But the film also knows when to let the effects take center stage. when to crank up the scale, and hit you with jaw-dropping visuals that make you sit up and pay attention. These set pieces don't feel like cold technical exercises. They feel alive, dynamic, pulsing with energy and emotion. What's especially satisfying is that the visual effects are used to serve the story, not just to create noise. They aren't there to distract. They're there to enhance. Whether it's the subtle flicker of something magical in the background or a massive, full-throttle action sequence, everything feels carefully measured to keep you immersed, not overwhelmed. The transitions between practical and digital are often so smooth that the seams disappear. The film understands that the best visual effects don't scream at you. They quietly convince you that what you're seeing is real. Even when the film stretches into big, imaginative territory, the visual effects keep their footing. They carry emotion, not just spectacle. They make you feel awe, but also danger, sadness, wonder, and sometimes even humor. The digital work is precise, thoughtful, and beautifully executed, and the practical effects ground everything in a tactile reality that keeps the world feeling solid underfoot. The result is a visual experience that doesn't just look good. It feels right. It pulls you into the story without breaking the spell, crafting a space where the unbelievable feels completely, irresistibly believable. The set design and locations in this film don't just provide a backdrop. They shape the story, breathe life into it, and give every scene a sense of place that feels fully lived in. Every corner, every prop, every weathered surface seems to carry a story of its own, like the world has been moving long before the characters stepped into it. The settings aren't flat spaces where things happen. They are part of the storytelling, reflecting the characters' journeys, moods, and conflicts with subtle and sometimes striking visual cues. You can feel the care poured into every detail, whether it's the clutter on a desk, the peeling paint on a forgotten wall, or the hum of a crowded street buzzing with the quiet rhythm of everyday life. The locations aren't just chosen for visual flair. They carry weight, they add texture, and they open up the emotional landscape of the film. Whether it's the sweeping grandeur of wide-open spaces that make the characters seem small and adrift, or the tight, claustrophobic rooms that press in on them, each place seems tailor-made to reflect what's going on beneath the surface. A character's home, a workplace, a back alley, a distant cityscape, none of it feels accidental. You can almost imagine what these spaces smell like, what the air feels like, how long they've existed, and who's passed through them before. The best part is that the locations evolve alongside the story. As the characters change, the spaces around them shift too, sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically, but always in a way that feels like the world is breathing in step with them. The props are never just decoration. They feel like personal artifacts, like pieces of a life in motion. A worn jacket, a chipped coffee mug, a stack of old letters, a childhood toy gathering dust. These small items speak volumes without saying a word. The production design knows when to load a space with detail, and when to strip it bare. Some rooms are bursting with life, crammed with books, photographs, forgotten trinkets that tell you exactly who the characters are. Other spaces are sparse, cold, deliberate, forcing the focus onto the characters themselves, or creating an eerie emptiness that can feel heavier than any words. The variety of locations is also a joy. The film doesn't feel trapped in a studio. It feels like it stretches across a world that's diverse, textured, and endlessly interesting. City streets pulse with energy, rural landscapes hum with quiet tension, interiors either comfort or confine, and each new place feels like a character in its own right. Sometimes a single location returns again and again, evolving each time, gathering new emotional weight as the story progresses. You start to feel connected to these spaces, like they're holding memories, like they've witnessed things you weren't allowed to see. The visual design doesn't shy away from bold choices when it needs to. Colors pop or fade depending on the emotional tone. Architecture bends from charming to imposing, and landscapes shift from welcoming to hostile. Even the weather seems to conspire with the mood. Rain falling during tense silences, sunlight breaking through in moments of clarity, the wind rattling windows as emotions spiral. The set design and locations have this quiet power, always working in the background to push the story forward, to deepen the impact, to make the world feel solid under your feet. Nothing feels generic. Even the smallest rooms, even the briefest street corners, have personality. The world is textured, layered, imperfect in just the right ways, and all of that combines to make the story feel rooted and believable. The film doesn't just show you where things happen. It pulls you into places that feel like they've existed long before you arrived and will continue long after you've left. Every door creak, every cracked sidewalk, every threadbare couch matters, building a world you don't just see, you feel. The dialogue in this film crackles with life, slipping effortlessly between sharp, witty banter and moments of raw emotional honesty that hit like a punch to the gut. The words don't just sound good. They feel real, like they've been pulled straight from the messy, unscripted conversations people actually have. There's no sense of characters reciting lines from a page. Instead, it feels like they're thinking in real time, fumbling through their emotions, covering up insecurities, and sometimes saying exactly the wrong thing at exactly the wrong moment in a way that feels achingly human. The dialogue dances between being funny, heartbreaking, awkward, and unexpectedly profound, and it knows exactly when to let a silence speak louder than words. Some conversations zip along with electric pace, loaded with playful jabs, snappy comebacks, and the kind of chemistry that makes you lean in just to catch every word. Other moments slow to a crawl, where words are chosen carefully, where a single sentence hangs in the air with weight and consequence. The film knows when to give you those beautifully written monologues that cut to the heart of the character, but it also knows when to keep things clipped, messy, and imperfect to let the tension simmer. The best part is that nothing feels forced. Jokes land because they're born out of the characters' personalities, not because the script is begging for a laugh. Emotional confessions matter because they're earned through the story's journey, not shoved in for dramatic effect. Even the casual throwaway lines sparkle with life and texture, offering little glimpses into the characters' worlds, and giving the film a constant hum of authenticity. The script layers conversations with subtext, making you listen for what's not being said just as much as what is. People talk in half-truths, in hesitant questions, in bitter sarcasm when they can't quite say what they really mean. And that unspoken tension is sometimes more gripping than the loudest argument. There are lines that stick with you. The kind of sentences you can imagine quoting long after the film ends, because they distill an emotion or a realization so perfectly that they feel like a little truth bomb dropping into your lap. Some of these standout lines are clever and cutting, some are tender and vulnerable, some are devastating in their simplicity, but they all echo long after they're spoken. The dialogue doesn't just exist to move the plot. It builds the characters, carves out their relationships, and drives the story's emotional rhythm. The way people interrupt each other, stumble over their words, or repeat things they don't know how to say better feels deliberate and deeply human. Conversations loop back on themselves, old arguments resurface, inside jokes pop up at just the right time to either break the tension or make it worse. The script is alive to these rhythms, capturing the weird, unscripted beauty of how people actually communicate. It plays with pacing inside conversations, sometimes snapping from line to line like a verbal tennis match, sometimes stretching out the quiet to make you feel the awkwardness settle in. When the film gets serious, the dialogue doesn't overreach. It doesn't try to sound too polished or grandiose. Instead, it finds the emotional core in simple, honest words that cut straight through. The power is in the restraint. Some of the most crushing lines are the ones whispered, the ones muttered under breath, the ones that land almost by accident but leave a crater in their wake. The script knows how to balance humor and heartbreak without leaning too far into either, keeping the emotional tone balanced on a tightrope where everything feels just the right amount of messy. The writing is sharp, but it also breathes. It allows space for characters to get lost in their thoughts, to dodge questions, to circle around what they're really trying to say. That makes the big moments, the moments when someone finally says the thing they've been avoiding, land with a beautiful, gut-wrenching honesty. The dialogue isn't afraid to let the characters be funny, mean, confused, poetic, silent. It embraces the full spectrum of what real conversations sound like. The script hums with life because it trusts the audience to pick up the nuances, to lean into the pauses, to hear the echoes of what's left unsaid. Every word matters, and even when the words fail the characters, the silence picks up where they leave off. The film doesn't just step into its genre, it kicks the door open and plays with the room. It knows exactly where the familiar beats are, where the audience expects the story to go, and instead of lazily following the blueprint, It toys with those expectations, sometimes delivering what you crave, sometimes pulling the rug out from under you. It's like the film is constantly asking, what if we did this a little differently? And that spark of curiosity pushes it into spaces that feel fresh and exciting even when it brushes up against familiar territory. It doesn't avoid genre conventions entirely, it respects them, but it's not afraid to twist them, stretch them, and sometimes completely break them just to keep things unpredictable. When the film leans into action, it doesn't just throw punches for the sake of it. The action feels sharp, personal, and driven by emotion. There's weight to every movement, consequence to every choice. And just when you think the story is about to follow the usual high-octane formula, it swerves, pauses, or flips the scene on its head in a way that makes you sit up and take notice. The suspense is built with patience, using silence, misdirection, and smart pacing rather than cheap jump scares or overused tricks. It lures you in, makes you think you're ahead of the story, then slips a twist into the frame just when you're settling into comfort. It's not the kind of film that rushes to deliver instant thrills. It lets the tension simmer until you can practically hear your own pulse. When it comes to humor, the film knows how to strike the right balance. It doesn't rely on forced one-liners or break the emotional rhythm with out-of-place gags. The humor bubbles up naturally from the characters, from their quirks, from awkward timing, from moments where laughter is the only thing keeping them from completely falling apart. It doesn't try to juggle slapstick with serious stakes. It finds humor in the cracks between the drama, in the human moments, in the beautifully imperfect ways people deal with pressure. The comedy doesn't undermine the tension. It sneaks in just enough to keep the story from drowning in its own intensity. The drama is where the film really stretches its legs, pulling out deeply felt moments that never feel like they've been pulled from a genre checklist. The emotional arcs are given space to develop. The characters aren't just trapped in the gears of the plot. They're steering it. The film sidesteps melodrama by making sure the stakes feel personal, and the relationships carry genuine weight. Even when it brushes against big genre moments, it grounds them in smaller, quieter truths. The emotional beats don't feel manufactured to serve the genre. They feel like they belong to these characters, to this story, at this specific moment. What really makes the film stand out is how it brings fresh ideas to the table, without announcing that it's trying to be groundbreaking. It slips in new perspectives, unexpected story turns, inventive visual choices, and bold pacing shifts that make it feel alive and unpredictable. It nods to the genre's history, but refuses to be trapped by it. You can tell the creators love the genre enough to play with it, not just follow it. When the film does lean into certain tropes, it does it with such self-awareness and skill that you can't help but enjoy the ride. It's like the film is in on the joke, but also genuinely committed to making those moments work. The result is a story that feels familiar enough to draw you in but daring enough to surprise you, packed with beats that know exactly how to mix action, suspense, humor, and drama without dropping the ball. The way the film juggles these elements within its genre feels effortless, like it's having fun while also digging deep. It blends emotional punch with clever pacing, balancing quiet character moments with gripping set pieces, threading humor through the tension without ever making the stakes feel like a game. It doesn't lean on cliches for comfort. It pushes against them, stretches them, reimagines them, and sometimes gleefully breaks them apart to build something more memorable in their place. The film knows the genre rules, but it doesn't always feel like playing by them. And that's where the magic happens. The film doesn't just play out in front of the audience. It pulls them in, wraps them up, and makes them feel like they're sitting right inside the story. From the opening scenes, it knows exactly how to grab your attention, not with loud spectacle alone, but with moments that sneak under your skin and set up an emotional hook you can't shake. It taps into universal feelings, grief, joy, fear, love, regret, and makes them feel so immediate, so personal, that even the quietest moments land with the weight of something big. The film finds that sweet spot where audience engagement isn't forced. It happens naturally as the characters grow, as the stakes rise, as the choices become harder to watch but impossible to turn away from. There are moments when the entire theater would be leaning forward, breath caught in their throats, waiting for a whispered confession, a painful truth, a decision you can feel coming but still aren't prepared to see unfold. And then there are scenes that jolt the audience, where gasps are inevitable, where the story zigzags in a way that shocks but always feels earned. The emotional hits aren't spaced out for convenience. They come when you've let your guard down, when you've gotten comfortable, when you think you've figured it out, and suddenly you're spiraling right alongside the characters. The film also knows how to deliver laughter that feels like a release. Not forced, not jammed in for the sake of lightening the mood, but laughter that bubbles up because the characters are messy, awkward, and real. The humor isn't just punchlines. It's in timing, in gestures, in those moments when things go just a little off track and reveal the cracks beneath the surface. These moments of levity are what make the emotional gut punches hit even harder, because they remind the audience that life is never just one thing. The joy and the pain sit right next to each other. And the film lets you feel the full spectrum without cutting corners. There are scenes designed to linger in your mind long after you've left the theater, moments that feel so true, so quietly devastating or electrifying, that they practically beg for discussion. These are the kinds of scenes people will want to dissect over coffee, to argue about with friends, to write think pieces about, to revisit just to see if they missed something the first time. The film invites repeat viewings not because the plot is complicated for the sake of being clever, but because the emotional layers are so dense and the character choices so rich that you know you'll pick up on new shades of meaning the next time you watch. It sparks those what would you do conversations, those heated debates about the rightness or wrongness of a choice, those lingering questions that settle in your chest and make you look at the world a little differently. The film's emotional resonance feels personal because it doesn't rely on big, showy gestures to make you feel. It uses the slow build, the silent stare, the hesitation before a word is spoken, the small details that quietly break your heart or make you beam. It knows how to pace these moments so that they hit with maximum impact, so that the laughter comes when you need it most, so that the shock lands when you least expect it, so that the tension stretches just long enough to make your pulse quicken. The audience isn't just watching. They're feeling, they're reacting, they're living alongside the story. What makes the engagement so powerful is that the film trusts the audience. It doesn't over-explain. It doesn't spoon-feed emotion. It lets viewers bring their own experiences, their own baggage, their own questions to the story. It leaves room for interpretation, space for reflection, places where the silence is loud enough for you to fill in the gaps. It's the kind of film where people might laugh at different things, cry at different moments, find different characters to root for or argue against, and that's what makes the experience feel alive. It's not a film that tells you what to feel. It hands you a story and lets you build your own relationship with it. Lets you find your own way through the joy, the pain, the humor, and the heartbreak. And once it's done, it doesn't leave you. It sticks, it echoes, it waits for you to circle back to it again and again. When stacking this film up against others in its genre, it immediately carves out its own space rather than blending into the crowd. It knows where it comes from, it respects the genre's legacy, the classics that paved the way, and the beloved tropes that audiences have come to expect, but it isn't interested in lazily following the same well-trodden path. It walks into the genre with a spark of rebellion, taking the familiar formula and bending it just enough to feel fresh without abandoning the heart of what makes these kinds of stories work. When compared to films that play it safe, this one feels like a shot of adrenaline. It takes the bones of the genre and stitches on new layers, adding unexpected emotional depth, sharp stylistic choices, and moments where it leans into subversion with a grin, as if daring the audience to predict what's coming next. It doesn't just tick the boxes, it redraws them. Against its closest genre siblings, this film stands out because of the way it balances spectacle and intimacy. Some films in this space go all in on the big moments, the sweeping battles, the grand twists, but sometimes they forget to give the audience something to hold on to, something that feels personal and grounded. This film remembers. It doesn't let the big set pieces drown out the quiet conversations, the tiny character details, the small decisions that end up carrying the biggest weight. It gives you the excitement, the shock, the suspense you're looking for, but it also layers in emotional beats that stick with you in a way that many genre films don't always bother to do. If you compare it to franchise entries, if it's part of a larger cinematic universe, it often feels like a standout because it's not content to be just another link in the chain. Some franchise films feel like they're checking assignments off a list, plugging in cameos, teasing the next installment, carefully coloring inside the lines. This one feels like it grabbed a corner of the universe and made it its own playground. It has its own rhythm, its own flavor, its own heartbeat. It respects the larger story but doesn't feel trapped by it. Instead of feeling like a stepping stone to something else, it feels like a full, breathing story in its own right. One that could stand tall even if you pulled it out of the franchise lineup. Looking at the director's filmography, the film either stands as a sharp evolution or a surprising detour. If the director is known for a particular style or tone, this film plays with those familiar tools, but pushes them in new directions. You can feel the director's fingerprints all over it. The way the camera lingers, the way silence stretches, the way humor slips in. But there's a clear sense of growth, of experimentation, of stepping into new creative territory. It feels like the director was excited, like they weren't on autopilot, like they wanted to push themselves just as much as they wanted to push the story. If the director has built a reputation for a certain kind of story, this one might either deepen that legacy or completely flip it, offering something that feels surprising but unmistakably theirs. What really sets the film apart when compared to similar stories is its willingness to slow down in a genre that usually races to the next explosion. It finds power in the quiet, beauty in the awkward, danger in the smallest gestures. Where other films might blaze past character development to get to the next twist, this one lingers, giving those moments room to breathe, trusting the audience to invest in the journey rather than just the destination. Even when it borrows familiar genre tools, whether it's the structure of a heist, the beats of a revenge tale, the rhythm of a coming-of-age journey, it does something just a little different with them. Maybe it flips a key trope, maybe it focuses on a perspective we don't usually get to see, maybe it rearranges the stakes so what matters most isn't what you expected. It plays with audience expectations, sometimes delivering what you're craving and sometimes snatching it away at the last second, but always with intention. When compared to similar films, this one sticks because it respects the audience's intelligence. It assumes you're paying attention, that you'll notice the layered writing, the emotional callbacks, the visual details that loop back on themselves. It doesn't talk down to the genre. It elevates it, stretches it, sometimes pokes fun at it, but always treats it with a kind of creative affection. It's not a film that feels like it's trying to be the genre's greatest hit. It feels like it's trying to carve out something personal, something that, even in a crowded genre, feels like it belongs entirely to itself. When a film steps into a long-running franchise, the question is always whether it's going to feel like a filler chapter, a flashy side quest, or a key turning point that reshapes the whole landscape. This film knows exactly where it stands in the grand tapestry, and refuses to be a disposable puzzle piece. It doesn't just lazily extend the story, it enriches it, deepens it, and sometimes even dares to shift its trajectory in ways that ripple across everything that came before. It's the kind of film that makes earlier installments feel even more layered because now, in the light of this chapter, old choices gain new meaning and forgotten moments suddenly snap into sharper focus. It plays like the missing heartbeat the series didn't know it needed until now. In a franchise, continuity can sometimes feel like a chain dragging a film down, but here it feels like a living thread. The film pays respect to what's been built without being shackled by it. It picks up dangling storylines, teases out consequences that earlier films only hinted at, and breathes life into side characters who finally get their time in the spotlight. And it doesn't just nod to past entries for cheap applause. It pulls them into the emotional core of this story, weaving old relationships and past battles into the current stakes in a way that feels earned. The callbacks aren't clunky Easter eggs. They're emotionally loaded, sometimes painful, sometimes triumphant, sometimes bittersweet. And what really makes this installment pop is that it isn't just setting the table for future sequels. It has its own emotional spine, its own story that matters in its own right, but at the same time, it leaves the doors cracked open just enough for the next chapter to come charging through. If the film is working within a historical frame, it steps into its era with a level of detail that feels almost obsessive, pulling you into a time and place with textures so vivid you can practically feel the scratch of the fabric, smell the streets, hear the distant hum of a world long gone. It doesn't parade its research like a trophy. It lets the history seep naturally into every frame, through the slang, the architecture, the social structures, the way people move, speak, and exist within their time. The film isn't content with just nailing the costumes and backdrops. It dives into the mindset, the beliefs, the rhythms of daily life that define the period. It captures the beauty, the brutality, the contradictions of its chosen time, and it refuses to sugarcoat or flatten out the complexities. Historical accuracy here isn't just a checklist, it's a narrative weapon. The film knows when to stay true to the record and when to stretch or reshape events to heighten drama or pull the emotional thread tighter. It doesn't feel like a dry textbook reenactment. It feels alive, dangerous, and pulsing with the weight of decisions that echo beyond the characters. The film understands that the best historical storytelling doesn't just recount facts. It drags you into the trenches, the ballrooms, the dusty streets, making you live alongside the people who shaped or were crushed by history. It also doesn't shy away from the darker edges of its time period. It stares into the uncomfortable realities, whether that's oppression, injustice, war, corruption, or cultural clashes, and makes space for those truths without smothering the story. When the film bends history for the sake of storytelling, it does so with purpose, sometimes to amplify voices that history buried, sometimes to draw sharper parallels to the present, sometimes to pose questions that the record books never answered. In both franchise and historical contexts, the film stands out because it doesn't feel like it's just filling a gap. It feels essential. Whether it's expanding the emotional core of a sprawling series or opening a window to a vanished world, it delivers something that lingers, something that invites audiences to look back with fresh eyes and forward with heightened curiosity. It isn't afraid to add new scars to the franchise's legacy or to peel back the layers of history to reveal the messy, complicated, beautiful people who lived it. It knows that being part of something bigger, whether it's a beloved saga or the weight of real-world events, comes with responsibility, and it rises to that challenge with ambition and heart. The film's budget wasn't just a number, it was a playground, a set of tools, a chance to either soar or stumble depending on how wisely that money was spent. Sometimes you can practically see the cash dripping off the screen, where every frame is stuffed with elaborate sets, sweeping camera movements, massive crowds, intricate costumes, and visual effects that feel like they were polished to perfection over endless late-night work sessions. Other times, films throw mountains of money at the screen and still manage to look oddly hollow, where the gloss can't quite hide the empty shell underneath. This film takes its budget and stretches it, shapes it, and uses every cent to craft a world that feels fully alive. Whether it was a modest mid-range production or a top-tier blockbuster with a jaw-dropping price tag, the end result feels like the filmmakers squeezed every ounce of value out of what they had. If this was a film with a towering budget, the money is clearly on display, but it isn't wasted on empty spectacle. It's there in the weight of the practical sets, the detail in the costumes, the scope of the locations, and the kind of visual effects that don't just aim to dazzle but to immerse. The resources allow the film to swing big, but it never feels bloated or indulgent. It knows where to scale up and where to pull back, where to flood the screen with grandeur, and where to let the intimacy of a quiet scene carry all the weight. If the budget was more restrained, the film wears it like a badge of honor. It leans into creative solutions, tightens its focus, and makes bold stylistic choices that turn potential financial limits into strengths. Sometimes smaller budgets lead to more inventive storytelling, forcing the filmmakers to get scrappy and think their way around expensive shortcuts. And this film seems to thrive in that space, making the world feel tangible even without a mountain of dollars behind it. The box office story is where things really get interesting. Financial success doesn't always line up with creative quality, and sometimes a brilliant film slips under the radar, while something more conventional rockets to the top of the charts. But when a film like this clicks with the audience, you can often feel the momentum start to build from the first weekend. Word of mouth starts to hum, people come back for repeat viewings, conversations start buzzing, and suddenly a film that might have had modest projections turns into a runaway hit. Sometimes the box office success is immediate, with packed theaters and sold-out shows from day one, especially if the marketing team managed to generate just the right blend of curiosity, excitement, and emotional pull. Smart marketing can turn a solid film into an event, and here, whether it was sharp trailers, viral teasers, perfectly timed promotional beats, or just a marketing campaign that genuinely understood the heart of the story, the film benefited from the kind of rollout that made it impossible to ignore. But box office doesn't live in a vacuum. Audience reception shapes it in real time. When viewers connect, when reviews start lighting up with enthusiasm, when people can't stop talking about that one twist or that one performance, ticket sales can snowball, sometimes outpacing the studio's wildest hopes. On the flip side, if a film stumbles out of the gate or faces mixed reception, even a blockbuster budget can't save it from a sharp drop in the following weeks. Audience trust is powerful, and once it's broken, it's hard to win back. The way this film handled that relationship, whether by delivering on promises, surprising viewers in the best ways, or simply offering something that felt emotionally resonant and worth the price of admission, played a huge role in how its financial story unfolded. Whether this film landed as a box office smash or struggled to find its footing, its financial journey is more than just ticket sales. It's a reflection of timing, marketing savvy, audience hunger, critical voices, and sometimes pure cinematic magic that captures the right cultural moment. A film can be technically perfect and still miss the wave, or it can surprise everyone by catching fire and becoming a phenomenon. This film's path through the box office landscape is part of its story, a layer that either amplified its reach or added a bittersweet twist to its legacy. What's clear is that budget and box office don't always define a film's impact, but here, they tell a story just as fascinating as what played out on the screen. You can currently catch this film exclusively in one place, or really one experience. It debuts globally on Amazon Prime Video on July 18, 2025, available to stream directly with a Prime subscription. IndiaTimes.com. 1. For the fullest impact, here's how to enjoy it best. Streaming mode. Watch it in high definition or 4K on a big screen, TV or projector, with a good sound system. The film's moody visuals, nuanced sound design, and emotional pacing are amplified when you sit back and let the tension, silence, and score pull you in without distractions. Movie night mindset. Turn off notifications, watch with headphones or in a dim room, and give it room to breathe. The story's slow burn tension and emotional beats unfold gradually. Interruptions can pull you right out of the atmosphere it's meticulously built. Second viewing bonus. After your first watch, revisit key scenes. The film is layered with subtle motifs, visual echoes, and character clues that reward deeper examination. With the world and twists freshly in mind, going back reveals a surprising amount of detail you might miss the first time around. In short, set aside an uninterrupted evening, dial up the clarity and volume, and sink into the film as it was meant to be experienced. 1. https://indiatimes.com/entertainment/binge/follow watch release day 20 where to watch Diego Boneta Martha Higuerita film htm_source equals sagpt.com. Follow OTT release date. When and where to watch Diego Boneta and Martha Higuerita's film, Juegos de Seducción.